We're speaking with Andrew Katos, local Liberal representative. Andrew, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, pleasure, Michael.
So we spoke last night to Darren Cheeseman about the carbon tax. It's a bit of a hot topic at the moment, you could say. And we had some questions around, the climate, around how it's going to affect business and homes and things. We were just wondering if we could get your opinion on those as well.
Yeah, certainly.
Certainly. So the first question I asked him was, after the announcement was made, the first number I heard come out was about the climate. And it was that the climate is going to be reduced by 1/4,000th of a degree by 2020 if the Labor Party met all their targets. So I asked Darren about that, and this is what he said.
Well, no, it is more political spin, of course. Tony Abbott hasn't been able to maintain a consistent argument, a consistent position on this. Every day he has a new argument, a new line, and by the end of the day we've, of course, put comprehensively to bed his argument of the day.
Yeah. So you may have noticed there was actually no mention of a number there. How would you respond to that?
Well, what's interesting with the debate is that, for example, we'll take Alcoa, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're offered a level of protection for the moment, but that's not indefinite. Now, since 1990, Alcoa has reduced its carbon emissions by 60%.
Wow.
So, which is a fantastic effort, and they're a very good corporate citizen, Alcoa.
Yeah.
Now, if this carbon tax ends up putting Alcoa, makes it unprofitable for them to run Point Henry,
mm-hmm.
and they close, that means that these jobs will go offshore, and they'll probably set up a smelter in somewhere like China, for example.
Definitely.
Now, what will end up happening is that the power they use to generate to run a smelter will create more emissions in China than it does here at present with Geelong operating at Point Henry. So by sending these jobs overseas, it'll actually do more damage to the environment, and it'll actually have a greater detrimental effect to global warming.
And it's interesting that you went straight to the jobs going overseas, because I was of that opinion as well that would happen as companies were unprofitable. They would potentially move offshore. So is that the Liberal position?
Well, look, I can't speak for the federal party. I'm mm-hmm. the state member.
Yep,
These
definitely.
are just my observations. But that's just something that will happen if that job if the smelter is closed, for example,
yep.
as a hypothetical, they'll set that smelter up somewhere else. And
yep.
what it will do, they will look to somewhere where they can set up and run the business at a profit.
Yeah.
Now, if they go to South America, if they go to China, for example, they will just end up exporting the jobs to other countries where they don't have the same level of good corporate citizenship that they do here in Australia.
Yeah.
So they'll actually put more emissions into the atmosphere if those jobs are exported overseas.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great to hear you say it, because honestly I thought I was going crazy because no one was seeing it the same way that I was seeing it.
Mm.
Now, the second question we asked Darren was about... Oh, hold on, I've had a brief mental blank here. Oh, yeah, that's right. We asked him about the tax itself, because I remember, again, one of the first things that came out was the Liberal Party was saying that, no other country has a tax like this in place. Why are we thinking we're so much smarter than everyone else? And he responded to that like this.
Well, a cap-and-trade system, which is effectively an emissions trading scheme, it's the model we're proposing in Australia.
Yep.
All of the European Union is subject to that.
Okay. So I think what's happened there is either on Sunday night the person speaking on behalf of the Liberal Party has been caught in a bit of a fib, or Darren himself is. Could you clear that one up for us?
Well, look, I'm not sure where the federal side where he was referring to there is, Michael. But one thing I can say, there's been absolutely no consultation around this with the Victorian state government.
Yep.
We weren't even asked what are your views on this carbon tax.
Mm-hmm.
And what it will actually do, from a state and local government perspective, it will put our costs up, and we will not be compensated at all. And the same with local government. Local government and state government are big power users.
Yeah.
Now, for example, we've got the public hospital system.
Mm-hmm.
This carbon tax will put up the electricity costs for the public hospital system by over $11 million each year.
Wow.
The public transport system, running the trams and the train network,
Yeah,
mainly in Melbourne where it's electrified,
definitely.
that will cost almost $13 million each year extra. So simply between, and I'm waiting on the figures for the education department, another big user of electricity.
Yeah.
Now that's almost $24 million a year
Yeah.
in extra money that the Victorian government has to find to pay for these higher electricity costs. Now, where are we going to find this money each year? And then you've got local government, your street lighting, etc. Local government's also a big user of power.
Yeah.
They're not going to be compensated either. So does this mean that we have to either find that extra money or cut a service? Is that what they're really wanting us to do? I don't want to cut services. I don't want to put people's taxes up. But this is what is happening.
Do the Labor government have an answer to that question? Because that seems like a very good question. I mean, it's something I hadn't even thought of. Because, obviously there's more than one state. So across the country, you're talking $100 million easily.
Yeah, well, if you multiply it across the six, you assume, perhaps you're right, around 100 million. But you assume some of the other states are less populous than Victoria and New South Wales. But yeah, that's $100 million extra a year on those two items across Australia.
Yeah, definitely. That's a crazy amount of money.
And there's no compensation to the state for that.
No. Well, I don't know. I don't know how you're going to do it. I'm actually kind of happy I'm not in your situation at the moment.
Yeah, well, this is something that will have to be considered.
Yeah.
And no one wants to put a tax up or cut a service. It's something we just don't want to do. No,
definitely. So, as the Prime Minister said on Sunday, the debate is over. You would disagree with that comment? The debate's not over at all?
Oh, I don't think the debate's far from over.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way that the Prime Minister can look anyone in the eye and be truthful about this matter. She stood there with her hand on her heart, 4 or 5 days out from the election, saying there will be no carbon tax under a government that I lead.
Yeah.
Now, if they feel this is the right thing to do, call an election, go to the polls, give people a say, make the election a referendum on the carbon tax. And if they feel that the majority of Australians want this, then they have nothing to fear.
Yeah. And I think if the Prime Minister wasn't so concerned with the popularity at the moment, that would be the path they'd go down. But
and Michael, there's another side. What the carbon tax, what this whole thing is doing, it's really putting a dent in consumer confidence and business confidence.
Mm-hmm.
People just aren't going out there and spending. They're actually, this has got people very jittery and they've got people worried.
Yeah, definitely.
Businesses are worried about investing because they're sort of thinking, well, if I go and invest in that machinery or whatever, well, this carbon tax is going to make it redundant or it's going to make it ineffective. People are legitimately worried what's going to happen in the future, and that's showing in their confidence. You only look at David Jones's figures that were released in the last few days.
Yeah.
That demonstrates that. That's one of the biggest retailers in Australia, and they're showing that people's confidence in their spending is that they don't want to. They're scared. Yeah, no,
it's such a big change for everyone. I mean, they say that 90% of the population is going to get X amount of dollars back, but they also say they're going to be spending billions and billions of dollars on clean energy research. So it's like there's all this money that they've got assigned, but how much money is actually coming in?
Look at clean energy research. The Victorian government's been very interested in clean coal technologies.
Yeah.
There's not a cent for it.
No.
So, basically clean coal technology is a power station that instead of sending the emissions into the atmosphere, sends it into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So, you find a pocket where you can capture that carbon.
Yeah.
No, not even looking at these. And Victoria will be hit very hard by this tax because we rely on the majority of our power is generated through brown coal. Now, we will be hit very hard
yep.
by this tax, and it's going to be very challenging.
Yeah, definitely. And as someone who works and lives in Victoria, it's definitely a concern of mine.
Yeah.
And you've already touched on it briefly, but we also asked Mr. Cheeseman about what effect this is going to have on both small and big business. My concern was small business, they're not going to be able to afford to deal with the price hikes and things like that in the short term, and it will force them to close. Whereas large international business can simply go to another country, which is something you've already briefly touched on. But this was his response to that question.
In terms of small businesses, of course, depending on the nature of small business, but their dependency on electricity can vary.
So, as you can see, there wasn't much of an answer there. I don't know if that's indicative that the Labor Party hasn't particularly thought about that.
Well, the Labor Party has never been a friend of small business.
Yeah.
They're not interested in small business and the small business owner. They're only interested in larger businesses that have a unionised workforce where they can exert a degree of control.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the Liberal Party has always been a friend of small business, and there are real serious ramifications for... You might have a manufacturing plant that employs 30 people or 40 people. They've got no protection.
Yeah.
They've got no compensation. Now, 30 jobs go here, 40 jobs go there, 50 jobs go there. They all add up.
Yeah, definitely.
Geelong still has a relatively large manufacturing base, and a lot of it still is in this small to medium size enterprise.
Yeah.
So there are real concerns whether what will happen here, and those businesses have got a right to be very jittery and concerned.
Yeah, definitely. And, coming from, kind of like a street level there, something I actually experienced myself. I was part of the Salmat Geelong crew that you may know closed down a couple of months ago, yeah. And I was looking for work in Geelong, and, unless you wanted factory work, there wasn't a lot available. So if that factory work goes as well, it doesn't look good for Geelong itself.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, everyone will then be going to Melbourne, and... Geelong's a great town. You don't really want it turning into a ghost town because of some unneeded tax.
Yeah, so that's the thing. And even the compensation for bigger business, that's not there indefinitely.
No.
Petroleum's exempt at the moment, but who knows? In 2 years, 3 years, if they're still in power, they'll put it onto petroleum. So this is all about. It's all about political expediency. The Labor Party has to sit there and cuddle up to the Greens now.
Yes.
Who effectively are their coalition partners now.
Yeah.
So they have to sit there and it's pretty interesting to see who's calling the shots now. And I don't think it's Julia Gillard anymore.
Well, yeah, that was the interesting thing. It's been brought up in conversation a lot. I don't remember the Greens being elected. Why are we taking such a... Not that pro-environment is bad, but why are we taking such this huge pro-environment stance when no one voted for the Green Party?
Well, and the other side to that, what you're saying, Michael, is what will this do for the environment?
Yeah.
For the overall environment of the planet, what will it do?
Well, as we've seen...
It's not going to do much.
Yeah. As we've seen from both from a state level and a federal level, no one in the Labor Party can put a number on it, and I think we should at least get a number.
I think Michael, they've got the numbers, they just don't want to release them.
Because they're no good.
They're no good.
Yeah.
They've got the modelling, they've done the modelling, they know what the modelling says, but they've put the wagons in a circle and they've all retreated inside the circle, and the natives are surrounding them at the moment.
Yeah. And, I think it's definitely like that. And I do just have one last question. It's not something I asked Mr. Cheeseman because, obviously, it's about Julia Gillard, so he can't really say too much. Yes. You obviously saw the announcement on Sunday. I picked up a lot of things in that speech that kind of concerned me, such as every time she was talking about the tax, it was we as the party taxing you, we as the party, etc., etc. And then as soon as she was talking about the tax exemptions, it was, I've decided to do this, this is what I'm doing. It concerns me a little bit that we have a Prime Minister that can't stand by a tough decision and instead will hide behind the party. Is that something that we should be concerned about?
Well, it's just classic Julia Gillard. When it's good news, can't keep her away from it. But if something's bad news, she hides. Yeah,
definitely.
And that's what's been going on here. And this, in the long run, I don't believe it's not a good news story for Geelong and our region.
No.
And I think Darren Cheeseman thinks that his electorate stops at the Barwon River, and what happens on the other side doesn't concern him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's got to learn pretty quickly that what happens on the north side of the Barwon River is of a major implication to Corangamite.
That's
major
correct.
implication, because that is where a lot of the jobs are.
Yes.
And a lot of those jobs are in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And this tax will absolutely, I believe, will have an extremely detrimental effect, particularly on small to medium enterprises, which there are a lot of. You can go and speak to the Geelong Manufacturing Council, and they can give you the figures how many small to medium enterprises there are in this city, and there are a lot of them.
No, actually, I think you've just given us our next lead there, so thank you for that, Andrew.
So that's a pleasure, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on. Should the debate continue, we'd love the opportunity to speak to you again down the track.
No problem.
All right. Have an excellent night.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye.
Thanks for your time.